Hello and good afternoon. Thanks for being here. Last year, Congress created a new federal tax credit for donations to scholarship granting organizations, or SGOs. Starting in 2027, individuals can claim up to $1,700 in federal tax credit for that giving, and Colorado has already opted in. My name is Sarah Butler, State Director for Empower Schools here in Colorado, and we're looking closely at this because it could mean additional funds for public school districts, rural districts included. So, what is this briefing and why now? This briefing is for rural superintendents, district leaders, board members, BOCES leaders, district foundations, and regional partners. We're framing it specifically for small and rural districts, but leaders of any district size can learn from this webinar. Two things up front. This is not legal advice, and it isn't a political statement, purely the information we know about this opportunity. And why now? Because it's a practical first look at whether SGOs could help rural districts solve student access problems. Colorado has already opted in. We have some guidance from the federal government already, and additional guidance is coming soon, so we'll make sure to highlight what we know for sure and what we are still waiting to learn more about. But with all that said, preparation can start now. I'm going to turn it over to Antonio, who will walk through the basic SGO mechanism, and then you'll hear from other speakers who are here to speak from their lens as well.
Thank you, Sarah. My name is Antonio Pares. I work at Walnut Hill Workshop, and I have been supporting school districts, advocacy organizations, nonprofits, and public school leaders across the state of Colorado, figuring out how we take advantage of this new program. Today, I want to talk just a little bit about, in this first slide, about basic mechanisms. To start with, how does this money and programming flow? Because it's a lot simpler than most people expect. Scholarship granting organizations aren't new. They're existing C3 nonprofits that raise money and award scholarships. What's changed is the fundraising mechanism. Instead of simply asking someone to make another charitable donation, the new federal law allows many taxpayers to redirect up to $1,700 of their federal tax liability into one of these organizations. The slide shows the basic flow. A donor gives to an approved SGO. The SGO verifies eligible students and approved costs. Scholarships are then awarded to those students. Then the district or another approved provider receives payment and students' access improves. The law doesn't require a parent marketplace, individual wallets, or thousands of one-off reimbursements. There is flexibility in how scholarships are structured and delivered. That's important because it creates the possibility of district scale implementation instead of treating every student like a separate transaction. If you're looking at this and asking what fees inside of my district or schools might qualify, then you're thinking more like an applicant. I'd encourage you to think like a fundraiser. Notice how simple this process can be. You define a fee around a district priority. You raise a pool of money from staff, families, employers, community partners, and other local donors. The SGO verifies eligible students and approved costs. Families authorize the scholarship process just once. Then the SGO pays the district in a batch with the documentation attached. The district isn't becoming the SGO. The SGO is the financial platform. The district identifies the opportunity, tells the story, organizes the campaign, and brings people into it. That's a very different posture than waiting to see whether one isolated expense gets reimbursed. Let's take a look at this in a real-life potential example. Here's what this could look like. If your district has decided that college credit, industry credentials, and work-based learning are priorities, you could create a single Big Three fee around these opportunities. And instead of fundraising for one program at a time, you build one campaign around helping eligible students access those opportunities. That's why you'll see the slide broken into one cost, one campaign, one calculation, one family step, and one batch. One cost means you've organized those student opportunities into a clear district priority. One campaign means you're inviting staff, families, employers, community members, and other local donors to redirect federal tax dollars into that priority. One calculation is actually pretty straightforward. You take the money that's been raised, divided by the number of eligible students, and that becomes the scholarship amount. One family step means families authorize the scholarship process once instead of navigating repeated paperwork. And one batch means the SGO can pay the district or approved providers with the documentation attached instead of creating hundreds of individual transactions. Again, the opportunity here isn't reimbursement. building a local fundraising platform around something your community already believes is important. What might sit inside of the big three fee? This last question is important, and I encourage you to start with your students, not just the law. Where are the students getting stuck because of costs? If the big three is your priority, then you start inventory the real barriers. Maybe it's AP or CLEP exam fees. Maybe it's dual enrollment costs or course materials. Maybe it's credential exams, CTE materials, safety equipment, transportation to college courses, transportation to work-based learning, or regional pathway programs. Those are the kinds of barriers that keep students from participating, completing programs, or accessing the opportunities to begin with. Treasury's final guidance this fall will continue to clarify exactly what qualifies, but districts don't have to wait to identify the barriers they're trying to remove. That's really the point of this example. Don't start by asking what expenses qualify. Start by asking what opportunities matter most for our students and what costs are standing in the way. Then build the fundraising strategy, removing those barriers.
It's not just a scholarship goes directly to a kid. This could go to fees for various system involvements. And for rural places, that can be really important because they often don't have the capacity to offer as much college credit options or industry credential options. But this kind of scholarship approach through a fee-based structure would help both the kids' choice and the rural system's capacity to deliver. My name is Brad Mitchell. I'm a recovering professor of educational policy from The Ohio State University. So from a national perspective, I've been asked to talk to, when you look at the various states, what are some of the issues that they're considering? First thing I would like to emphasize is we're taping this in mid-July, so the game could shift because the next 6 months, a lot of things are going to happen. Get that between red and blue. Colorado is in a very interesting position. As a blue state, it could be a first mover in redefining the federal scholarship tax credit around the issues that Antonio was talking about in terms of providing more capacity building support for rural school systems to deliver more choice in ways that fit their local context. The practical response is the donor base is an issue, but with this now ability to adapt where the money goes, particularly if it goes and stays in the rural area, you can broaden the campaign for donors through your own alumni, through regional partnerships, through regional economic development activities, and a variety of collaborative efforts, chambers of commerce, stuff like this. There are ways to do shared administrative load on this to make it a possibility where you could have an SGO specific in your area or in your region, or serving your area or serving your region. Provider supply, if it was just a scholarship going to the kid, it doesn't often help rural systems very much, and it might actually hurt them. But the way that Antonio was talking about it, the money could help in terms of distance cost, transportation cost, staffing cost, and help build up the provider's capacity to be able to provide the choices that the local communities want. The next barrier that often comes up is unclear use of funds. A variety of ways you could do this. From what you hear, you could build your own SGO. BOCES are an interesting approach that might be able to do that, or other regional models that can do that. This isn't just a choice model. This is a system correction model to make the game fairer for rural places. The other thing that makes Colorado very distinct right now is rural's at the table during the times of rules and regulations. It has a network infrastructure and it has the spunk to make it happen. So now I'm going to turn it over to Tammy, and she's going to take it from a broader policy context.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brad. And I think honestly, that you've teed up. I just want to speak very briefly about the decision for Governor Polis to opt in Colorado in 2027. And really, it does come down to this idea of opportunity. So there are a few key reasons why Polis became the first Democratic governor to opt Colorado in. We have every intention of staying in this program in 2027. Why Governor Polis opted us in was that he did not want to leave any sort of available taxpayer dollars or the opportunity to get individual donors thinking about putting their money towards more student supports. He didn't want to leave any of that on the table. The statute makes very clear that this tax credit is available to all federal taxpayers, regardless of whether or not your state participates. So what that could mean in practice is that if Colorado hadn't opted in, we could have Coloradans send their taxpayer dollars to a neighboring state that did. Number two, like I said, the statute is extremely clear, has been extremely clear from day one that this tax credit is available to benefit benefit public school students. I know that there's a lot of conversation that this is rooted in just reiterating a voucher model for private school students. And while that is an option for donors through this tax credit, the statute explicitly states that public school students can also benefit through all of the various eligible qualified services that will be covered under this. So, including things like tutoring services, after school programs, a lot of the things that we've covered here. So, given that, we know that is where the vast majority of Colorado students go to school or in public school settings. And then the last thing I just want to reiterate is that really, truly, this tax credit does not have anything to do with Colorado dollars. And so when I say that, what I mean is that this isn't our general fund dollars. This is not taking away anything else that Colorado is only already putting towards our school system. What we see this as is really additive and hopefully supplementary to those dollars. However, like I said, we feel pretty confident that from the preview guidance, we have a very good sense of where this tax credit will be. And we will be hopefully able to actually release our process for having eligible SGOs apply to be on Colorado's eligible SGO list as soon as that final guidance does come out, which we are expecting right now sometime in September. They're saying back to school time, which is, I think, a catch-all for probably that time of year. So really what that means is that we will have a couple of month turnaround, probably between September to sometime in November, to have any eligible SGO that wants to be on our list submit that information to our Department of Revenue. And that list will officially go live on January 1st. And at that point, that's really where there's the opportunity to start communicating what is available, what services that SGO will be supporting to taxpayers to encourage them to donate their $1,700 to that cause. Thanks.
Thanks, Tammy. And yeah, I'm Shannon Nicholas with Colorado Succeeds. We represent the business community on a number of K-12 and post-secondary and workforce issues, and I've been grateful enough to partner with so many of you in your big three efforts over the last several years. I think I just want to double down on what several of my colleagues here have described as the opportunity. These are partners that you potentially have had at the table through your work-based learning experiences, through your pathway development, but obviously they play civic leader roles across your communities. And so using them as your champions for building out whatever your SGO work might look like in terms of your campaigns. But importantly, your community of employers are also thinking about their talent pipelines, and they're wanting to make sure that young people are prepared for what comes after high school.
Okay, before we close out, I think it would be helpful if all of our speakers could give a 20-second headline. If listeners leave with only these headlines from today about SGOs, what would you send them off with? Who wants to go first? Brad, you came off mute. You want to go first?
Sure. I think my headline would be, I wrote it down: scholarships at work, skills that stay, communities that thrive in the rural areas. And it comes down to framing, structure, and durable collaboration. And how we frame this is the most important thing, and then having the STO structure to make it work. But ultimately, that's going to come through collaborative action, strong workforce economic, community, school economic development ties, and civic and public culture.
Thanks, Brad. Antonio?
Yeah, I'll say just to, I think, remind folks that one, you have donors already there that you can ask to redirect some of their federal tax liability into an SGO. That SGO can then cover expenses that you identified that are real barriers to some of the priority areas in your district or the outcomes you hope to have for kids. And you can design this, as others said, in an innovative way that really works for you. And what does it mean to rely on community members and partners, BOCES, other districts, think innovatively, think horizontally, so you can scale your impact. This is not something that should be thought of or built for private schools or large urban districts. I think there's definitely a really good lane here for rural districts.
Thanks, Antonio. Tammy, you want to go next?
Yeah, I would just say that there's opportunity here, and it is not too late to get to the table if you haven't already been involved in some of these conversations. Although, in order to participate and really be set up for success at the start of 2027, you should get to those tables and parts of those conversations now. So all of the folks on this call are willing and able to help make those connections for you, and we hope that this has been a helpful resource.
Thanks, Tammy. All right, Shannon.
Yeah, I think I would just reiterate that this is happening whether we want it to or not. And so my pitch is to make it work for Colorado. And the only way we're going to do that is if you're at the table. And we really want this to go to public school kids, to public schools. We know there are costs that you need support paying for. This is federal money, and donors will give their money to those who ask. So let's ask.
All right. Thank you all. I'm going to close us out with 5 questions for you, the listener, who can be thinking about, like Tammy said, if you're interested in learning more, it's time to get to the table, and this is where you can start. So 5 questions. What student costs block access currently for your kids? What opportunities matter most locally in your region, in your district? Build, partner, explore shared infrastructure. So who else is in your region who you could partner with? District foundation, BOCES, employers, providers, and council. Who are the right people who you can go on this journey with? And engage rural partners, policy and implementation partners, such as Empower Schools and GSN. We can provide support, and please reach out to us. But the question there is, who else knows you, knows what you need? Who can you partner with? And my headline is that while we don't have all the answers yet, we hope that this information empowers you to decide, to explore whether there is an opportunity here to apply this funding in your local context. So please reach out. Thanks for joining.